Welcome to the latest episode in my History of Dark Ages England. This is the story of how the country came into being. Please give feedback, and if you find it gradely, then click the like button. Episode 24, Canute and England. In 1028 saw Canute maintaining part of his Danish empire when he went with 50 ships to Norway to drive out King Olaf, who was killed, and Canute returned the following year after a highly successful mission. The economy of the country had gone through great turmoil during Athelred's reign. The continual emptying of the coffers to pay the Danegeld will have had a dramatic effect on investment and wages. Unfortunately, there is no writer of the time even touches on the subject, so we can only surmise as to how this affected the everyday life of the average farmer and churl. Firstly, though, it would lead to things like fences being mended, not replaced, buildings left unrepaired, or an old cart being used much longer than the farmer wished. This was free trade in the raw, so any costs would be passed on immediately and not paid if the money was not there. The traders in Flanders no doubt did well, as they would be able to sell into the Vikings at increased prices, as the heathens had just gained a bonus from the English in Danegeld. But the English would be less well dressed, as merchants imported less from Flanders and other places, and people relied on home manufactures for their purchases, which would be vastly reduced with the disruption and drain on the economy. That England looks to have still been fairly wealthy pays tribute to the infrastructure of trade and markets. This may well have spread out from Wessex and the time of Alfred, when he was setting up his burghs. They seem to have been markets as well as defensive strongholds. They probably worked because they were places of trade, not just refuge. And while there would always have been markets, the idea of centralised markets throughout the country would possibly have been taken up. Certainly Canute standardised the coinage throughout his empire. One thing is clear: wealth was there, and while it would have taken perhaps a decade to get up to full flow, trade in Canute's time, especially at the start of his reign, will have been brisk. I would put from around 1019, the year after Canute's reign begins, as the time trade starts to really get back to some flow. The important or small things would be the first to be renewed, the plough repaired or sharpened, a new pair of boots or a new billhook. Then the capital items, like the plough, replaced with new. That old barn with the thatch half blown away, replaced with new. And the fencing, replaced. There now being the cash to pay a peasant, tradesman or serf to do the job. The farmers, or Viking soakmen, are now able to buy those extra items, like the finer clothes in the latest fashions from Flanders. There will have been fashions, we just have no idea what they were. We know what some of the designs were from the illuminated books of hours and psalters that have survived, showing the ladies and gentlemen about the fields and houses in their finery. However, we don't know what the latest colour was in different decades, or how the headdress differed from last season, perhaps what the distaff was hung from. One can imagine the gossip, however. Well, red pierced leather is so last season. It's only blue plated this year at court. What is evidenced is an increase in manufactures. Pottery booms. The archaeologists suddenly see a great increase in metal artefacts along with the earthenware. This, again, fits in with an economy let loose from the restraints of constant taxation. After the first 5 years or so, not only would the confidence have returned, but also the coinage. This helps release the latent stored value. When people are made poor through taxation and continual payments to an outside body, it drains the economy of money in the way we see the Danegeld seems to have done. But the knowledge is still left. The skills are still in the hands of the peasants or others. It's just they are not used because the profits are continually stolen. But the pent-up demand may still be there in the form of value. Released from this burden of tax and with the correct laws of protection in place, the merchants and tradesmen of a free trade society do what they are good at and hence make money. Because that stored value is allowed to be released, this converts into profit and that is transmitted, all things being equal, which they never quite are, into wealth, and that wealth is and was distributed. In Canute's time, there is no evidence of widespread corruption of bureaucrats. No doubt pockets were lined, but the people were close to their earls of the wapentake, as the new areas are called by the Vikings, and anything too extreme would lead to the lord to want his cut. But then that leads him open to being prosecuted via the king, who in the end seems to have been even-handed. But it also shows how the voice of the peoples, or in this case sokemen, the revised Viking name for the farmer, is heard. The wealth of the country increased vastly at this time, but that is from a very low point, which was probably a decrease from the latter time of Alfred. But things had improved from the time of Bede, who was probably a little wealthier than when the Anglo-Saxons of the 7th century started to gain their foothold. And this would be an improvement from the absolute nadir of the late 6th century penury. The manor had effectively come into being since before Dunstan's time and was continuing to grow in importance. This is tied in with the change from the churls to earls and their increased importance to the king as a way of getting his military support. By the term increased wealth, I do not just mean monetary value, I mean laws, religion, standard of living, plus fiat money, which is just a token that holds a stock of value. By the standards of the Romans, the Anglo-Saxons at the time of Canute were paupers. Yes, there would be individuals who were nearly as rich as some Romans, but the whole wealth of the nation, and I think we can use the term nation freely from this point, was still poor in comparison with what had been. The amount of numeracy and literacy was woeful compared to the Romans. The infrastructure and trade were a fraction of the time of the empire, but things were improving and would continue to improve in fits and starts. King Canute did what Offa had done and standardised the currency of the Danish Empire, and although the penny introduced by Offa was now made to Scandinavian weights, it remained the silver penny. The Danes seem to have integrated very quickly. The similarity in language between the Vikings and the newly forming English of the Anglo-Saxons would help. And 19 years of stable rule by King Canute, along with an increase in prosperity, are not factors to bring resentment. And witness, he is seen as being a wise ruler by both factions. Canute, as one may expect, had promoted his own earls. We can tell this from the charters, which he signed dux, the Latin for ruler, and Latin is used as the lingua franca at this time. But according to Stenton, at the beginning of the reign, only a few are English names. The rest are all Scandinavian. The laws are made by the king, they are agreed by the earls, but the agreement is mainly as witnesses. If you found this video greatly, give it a thumbs up. I publish a new video every Monday with occasional bonus episodes, usually on a Thursday. Also, please comment and spread the word on social media. I would appreciate any recommendations and press that subscribe button. Thank you.